Hi, I'm Allie. Join me as I show you this Ocular Delica design, which goes great as a bracelet or even continuing on as a chain look necklace. If you need any supplies, go ahead and look below the video where you can get links to your Delicas and your 4mm pearls. Gather up your supplies and let's get started. So to get started with our ocular design, it's really quite simple. We're going to begin our first one by putting on a stop bead onto the end of our thread. I'm using the white dragon thread in size 6 for this project, and we are going to be doing kind of peyote with a twist. Not quite peyote, but the concepts of peyote. We're putting that on and we're leaving a little bit at the end, about 10 inches or so, that you can attach the clasp to it. After the fact, we're going to be building one direction, and then we are going to put on our clasp and our ends after. So to begin, how we are starting once this stop bead is on is we are going to start from the outside in for the rest of the project. The first one, which you can make a lovely pair of earrings, we're going to start from the inside out. So we are going to add 1, 2, and 3 of our Delica beads, and then we are going to add a pearl. 3 more Delica beads, and a pearl. We're going to do this a series of 4 times because we want to get kind of that diamond shape that we're achieving. And then we're going to go in and do a little bit of our peyote stitch. So I have 3 on right here. I need 1 more set, finishing up with my Delicas, and then my pearl. From here, we are going to sew back through those first 3 Delicas and come out after the pearl and the first Delica after that. So out bead number 1. So that's one of the 3 sets that we've added. What we're going to do now is go around the circle here, and we are going to add another Delica that sits right on top of Delica number 2 on each seed bead section. Add a Delica, sew through, skip over the next seed bead, sew through Delica number 3, your next pearl bead, and then in your next group of 3, Delica number 1. See how that starts your peyote pattern there? Coming out Delica number 1, add a bead, skip over bead number 2, sew through 3, Delica, and bead number 1 from the next section. Again, adding a bead, skipping bead number 2, sewing back through bead number 3, pearl, bead number 1, and out. From here, last bead goes on, and I'm sewing through the pearl, the Delica number 3 and the pearl. Coming out through the pearl there, we are going to start to build up some of those peyote sides. To build them up, I want you to add 2 of your Delica beads, catch on to that 1 bead that we just added at the top there. Beads will kind of sit there to the side. 2 more Delicas get added, and you sew through the next pearl. So this time all we're doing is exiting right after the pearl. Adding 2 more beads, sewing through the next top Delica bead that we just added, that little diamond. 2 more go in, and through the next pearl. Now, like I said, this is the only one where we're building from the inside out. The next ones we're going to kind of be building from the outside in, because rather than doing these all as pieces or components, we're going to do it as one long bracelet. So I'm going to show you how to do the next one and switch up colors just for you to be able to see it a little bit better. So here we're going through, adding 2 more beads in, catching into bead number 1. Just kind of push that stop bead to the back. Make sure your thread does not get caught around the stop bead, because eventually it's going to come off once we add our clasp. And back through. Now, when we come back through here, and we're back through here, what we want to do is we want to add 1 more seed bead. We're going to sew through our first 2 beads here. Coming out through the top, we're going to make a little point. So when you're out through those 2 seed beads, you're going to add 1 more Delica, and you're going to sew down through the other 2 seed beads, through the pearl, and then up through those next 2 seed beads. So we added the 2 seed beads, and basically we're sewing up through those 2 seed beads. There's a hole in the peyote there, so it's going to look like The center of the peyote has 3 beads wide. Sew over then through those next 2 beads that you just added. See how that's getting added in right there. And then up through the 2 beads that you just added. So those groups of 2 beads that you just added, we're just filling the hole in the middle by adding another bead. Sewing around then through the next one of my pearls. And that will create that little point of Delica beads on each one of my corners. From here, excuse me, you could make a lovely pair of earrings and stop. What we're going to do instead is coming back to this starting corner and just see kind of how this is pretty and it's all, you get that nice diamond shape. I'm going to sew up to the point of that first Delica that we just added going around when we added the 4. So I'm coming out through that point of my bead. When I'm coming out through that point of my bead here, you can see this is how we're going to link them together. I'm changing up the color and doing a blush color so that way you can see where one begins and one ends. So I'm going to get out my next color of Delicas. I'm keeping with the same color of my seed beads, and I'm going to get ready to do my outer loop. So my outer loop now I'm reversing, and we're going to go from doing the outside, inside out to the outside in. So here we are coming out of the top of that row of 3 Delica beads. You can see it kind of in each corner. 3 right there, 3 right there, 3 right here. And we are going to get ready to add our next one of our little ocular diamonds here. And we are going in and we are going to add 2 of our Delica beads, and I'm switching colors. And then we're going to add 1 of our pearls. In between the rest of the pearls, we're going to do 4 pearls on, but in between the rest, we are going to pick up 5 of our seed beads. The reason we're doing 5 is because the outer peak actually consists of 5 beads. So we're grabbing a bead, adding 5 seed beads, grabbing a bead, 5 seed beads, etc. You're going to end up with 3 groups of 5 seed beads between your 4 pearls. You have 2 Delica beads at the start. You're going to have 2 Delica beads at this ending. The reason is because we're going to sew back through that Delica that the thread is currently coming out of. That rounds out the design and connects the next one without us having to add all of these little diamonds together. From here, we're going to go to the interior a tiny bit. I want you to sew through those next 2 Delica beads that you added right away next to the pearl and out through the pearl. Once you're out through the pearl, we're going to connect all of the pearls with 3 Delica beads. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3 Delicas, and then we're going to sew into the next pearl. We're going to add 3 more Delica beads, sew into the next pearl. Now, naturally, because 3 is less than 5, those 3 seed beads are going to come to the center of the design. What I love about this is that it actually is a whole nother look and a whole nother bracelet. And you could easily, if you wanted to, just do it a little bit easier and just do this design. See how it's taking that nice shape? 3 beads go on, back through that first pearl, and I'm going to sew back through that first Delica bead after the pearl in the group of 3 seed beads that we just added. Once we pull that, you can see that formation starting to happen. So see how that kind of rounded formation is starting to happen? What we want to do is exaggerate it more and do our look to it. So we're going to go around here, just like we did at the start. If you need to, you can kind of rewind or look back. We're going to add 1 seed bead in between bead number 2 in that peyote style. So we have the group of 3 seed beads. We're coming out of seed bead number 1. We're skipping over seed bead number 2, adding another bead, and sewing through seed bead number 3. That gets our peyote stitch diamond right in there and right in place. Go through the next of your pearls, sew through bead number 1 of that group of 3 seed beads that's on the interior, add another bead, skip over bead number 2, sew through bead number 3, and at the same time, usually I can sew through the next pearl and the next Delica number 1. You're doing everything that you're doing to all 4 corners. Going through and adding these in. And just as you're doing it, just kind of roll them in your fingers, give a little tight pull on the thread, not the needle, and add in the last one. As you add in that last one here, again, we're kind of reversing this whole process. You're going to be coming out of the pearl where you just exited to start that row. We're going to sew through beads number 1 and 2 from that peak of 5. So this is why I'm doing it differently, so you can see kind of the different steps. Beads number 5 beads that went along the corner, we're going to sew through beads number 1 and 2. And the way to make it exactly like the first little diamond here is to pick up the top of that Delica bead that you just added and sew through. So we're connecting that little diamond of Delica beads to the exterior, and you're going to sew through beads number 4 and 5, leaving that top 3rd bead to be the point. Coming out here, sew through beads 1 and 2 of that top 5 exterior row of beads after the pearl. And then from here, go down, sew into that bead right there on the top of the peyote list or peyote stitch, and then come out of there and sew through beads 4 and 5 and on to the next pearl. So once again, we're coming out of the pearl, we're sewing through beads number 1 and 2 on that exterior line of 5 beads. We're going to pick up that individual bead that we added in that peyote stitch, and then we are going to sew on to the 2 there and come on out. From here, we're back at the starting spot. We're going just like we've been doing through those 2 beads first of that group of 5. The center bead, which we're not going to go through, is the one that connects. You sew through that center bead that sticks up from the peyote little diamond of 4 beads. And then you sew, once again, through beads 4 and 5 on the exterior and through the pearl. Once you're done that one there, that's the ending of getting that next diamond in place. And you can see how they connect. And what I'm going to do is sew through my project along that peyote stitch and get to the corner that sits opposite of your first diamond. So I'm just sewing back through the design here, just wiggling my needle through, getting to come up through that point. When I'm up through that point, then I am ready to continue on with the design and get my next circular or that little next ocular section done. Once you're done with your pattern and you can see that pretty kind of fall blush color or the gold here, it's time to attach the clasp. So one thing I did want to show when I was designing the bracelet, I played around with the idea of putting a 6mm bead in the middle. If you don't want to make it empty, you can always play around with changing up colors, putting a bead in the middle. I really loved it empty, so I created this one empty, but certainly put one in the middle if you like the look of it. But at the end here, we're going to put on our clasp. So I've already put the clasp on here at the one end using a pearl and my tongue here. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other end. So I'm coming out of the last one of my diamonds, and I'm going to pick up one of my pearl beads. And this is going to be my infinite clasp that I'm using. And I have a pretty lila luster cab I'm going to put in there. The nice thing with these is that the end is soldered, that little loop, so I can go right through. You can use a wire guard if you want to, but because it's soldered, you don't risk the thread coming out through an opening in that little jump ring. Then I'm going to go back down the pearl, and the bead that I'm coming out of, I want to go into the opposite side of that bead. So you're coming out of one side there, you're going into the opposite side and circling the thread around, giving a nice tight pull and making sure you don't have any extra thread showing. We want to reinforce that. One more time, going through the pearl, through the loop, back through the pearl, and then through that Delica bead as well. Give a nice tight pull. And if you want to, you can even do it a third time. From here, we need to get rid of our thread. I'm going to weave the thread back towards the interior of the project, like I did over here. and tie off the thread in an inconspicuous spot and burn it down along the thread edges to complete my bracelet. The only thing I need to do then is glue on my cap, and my Ocular Delica bracelet is completed. I love the look of this and I can't wait to see everybody's variations. Thanks so much for joining me in this fun design. Remember, you can post your versions of the bracelet or a necklace on our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. As always, if you need any supplies, they are below the video. There's links there to our website that you can check out all of the goodies we have. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for our next inspirational design.